Hey guys, in this video we're talking 12 volt air conditioning for your van. When it comes to AC, you have lots of options to choose from. In this video I'll show you why I chose and how I installed this 12 volt undermount air conditioning unit. Let's get into it.
Rooftop AC units have some clear advantages. They're easy to install in standard 14 by 14 cutouts, and you don't need to worry about road salt or mud clogging up your condenser fans. But they are heavy and expensive, like this Nomadic Cooling 3000 unit, which is $5,500, weighs 65 pounds. And lastly, it takes up valuable roof real estate, which could be used for more solar. Undermount AC units are also known as mini splits. This means that the compressor and condenser are mounted underneath the van and the evaporator is inside. This allows them to be more efficient and gives you flexibility in where you mount the components. Once I decided to go with an undermount unit, I had to figure out which one to purchase, and I found three options. The first and cheapest option was to order a Chinese unit directly from Alibaba, but because I knew we might sell this van, I wanted to go with one that had support and a warranty. The most common option I came across was the Cruise & Comfort 12 volt unit. In addition to the cost, there were a couple things I didn't love about it. One was the low BTU output. With an extended length transit, I was worried it wouldn't be enough power to keep the van cool. Second was the large 4-inch blower duct size. I had hoped to run the ducting through the walls and I knew that a 4-inch duct wasn't going to fit. Then I came across this Pro Air unit, which comes factory on Road Trek and Embassy RV motorhomes. I liked that it was the most efficient unit and that it had 2.5-inch ducting ports. At first it looked like I would have to order all the components separately from Pro Air, but then I realized a guy named Tom had started a company called UndermountAC, in which he gathered all the components and sold it as a kit. Luckily it was only $23.99 at the time, so I went ahead and purchased it. Now let's get to the install. So because I went with the ducted evaporator, I had 4 2.5-inch ducting ports that I could run my ducting from. This meant that I had to figure out early in my build where I was going to run the ducting. I purchased 40 feet from Infinite Auto Parts. It was much cheaper to buy from the US than in Canada. I also ordered 2 of these louvered, fully closing vents off Amazon, and then I used one 60mm Webasto style vent. Luckily it fit the ducting as well. We decided to run some of the ducting inside the walls of our van, so to prevent any condensation buildup, we purchased this 4-foot by 10-foot insulation from Home Depot and modified it.
We're going to secure the hose to our vents using just hose clamps, and then I found these little mounts that you can screw into the wall, just little mounting bases to use with zip ties that we're going to kind of anchor the hose intermittently along the roof.
I've never seen those before.
No, they
hate
use
those
screws
so
with
much.
these ones.
Why don't we use those last?
I don't know, they're different. These ones have screws, the adhesive does not work. So now I'm at the garage here. Just wanted to show you the AC unit will be going right here with 4 ducts. So we have the hose, it's going to come across up in the wall here in the corner. And then I'm going to drill a hole in the top of that bump out so the air will blow back this way, and then we'll also drill a hole on the top of that bump out, so it should be a really nice cool area for the bed and keep the cold air at the back of the van.
As you can see, that was definitely a 2-person job trying to carefully feed that AC ducting into that wall panel without damaging it at all. Once we decided where the vent should go, we measured it for a precise spot, and then we used a 2.5-inch hole saw to drill it out. Next I threaded in the vent, but I realized I wasn't going to have any way to tighten my hose clamp, so I drilled out a bigger hole on the side of my furring strip. I struggled trying to secure the duct to the vent, so here's what I ended up doing.
Okay, slightly different strategy. I've put the duct on this little clamp ring, and with my hose clamp, and then just very, very lightly tightened it because I don't want to compress the ring at all. Now we got it. The angle is pretty finicky.
Finally, I used the drill on a low torque setting to tighten that hose clamp.
The vent is in and the wall is on. Just wanted to show you what this side looks like.
Now I just had to repeat the same steps on the passenger side of the van, and thankfully, like most projects in the van, it went much smoother the second time. Here's the finished product on the passenger side, and now we're ready to move on with the install. Today is hopefully install day of the Undermount 12 volt air conditioning unit. What I suggest doing is lay out the components kind of each on their own. The evaporator, the dryer, and the mount for the compressor, and the condenser. You can see I've placed everything kind of with it, as well as the electrical components. So I've laid everything out like this just to try and visualize in my head how everything's going to run, where I can have the shortest runs and try and keep as many hoses and electrical lines together when I'm drilling holes in the bottom of the van. They include pretty much everything that you need
except you'll need your own cinch clamp or crimpers. I just got a little PEX one here for like 30 bucks to secure the AC line. You'll need a 150 amp circuit breaker, which I'm going to run 4 gauge cable to and from, and I'm going to double them up on one of the posts here. I also picked up just a kind of junction terminal or stud that I'm going to use for my grounding wire near the control panel. So there's a lot of little grounds coming off the control panel, and I'm going to mount those on this stud.
Next, you'll want to go to the Undermount website and download or print off this installation guide. I highly recommend reading through it a couple times, and then find this schematic, which will be your roadmap to the install.
And the last thing you'll need is some aluminum flat bar or angle just to mount the condenser and the compressor underneath the van.
You basically have 2 options for where you can mount the condenser. The first is on the driver's side beside the fuel tank, and the second is behind the rear differential, which is what I did. If you have a regular length transit, you'll need to move your spare tire. I used 2x2 angle aluminum to create a 19-inch long bracket to support the condenser. I drilled out the 3 holes and then bolted it onto the unit. Next, I mounted the condenser unit using the large self-tapping screws that came with the kit. I wanted to use plus nuts, but I couldn't find any in the spot I wanted to mount it. After the install, I purchased a thread checker to confirm the Ford factory mounting point sizes underneath the van, so I'll plan to use those next time.
I abandoned the cross nut and I went with 3 self-tapping screws up into the frame. Those things are really strong and they grab nicely, so I got no concerns about those. And then I was able to put 3 in. This bracket is so strong, I tried to drill through it and there is no way. The condenser comes across to the aluminum angle, and then I added a lock nut on the self-tapping screws, so I did 3 on this side as well, 3 on this side. I have chosen this as my spot for the compressor, up like this. I want a really strong mounting point on this bracket, so I'm going to do 2 cross nuts here, and then I'll do self-tapping screws as well. I'm hoping it'll be good because it's nice and close to these ports. It'll be nice and close to everything coming out this side.
As you can see, this thick metal under the van is really hard to drill through, so I always tried to use as many of the existing holes as possible for my cross nuts. I recruited my nephews Wyatt and Sawyer to help me mount it, but in hindsight I would just leave the compressor and dryer off the mount until it's secure in place.
Nice, you can let go.
Okay, you gotta put that one.
The compressor here is mounted, but you can see it's a little bit shaky. Very secure, but shaky. So, I'm gonna I cut this angle aluminum, and I'm gonna mount it up right like this, and secure it like that, so it reinforces it from the back. Maybe not really necessary, but it just prevents a little bit of extra flex on the lines there. You can see that I've removed the compressor and the dryer from the mount. In hindsight, I would just mount it like this, figure out, where your bolts and everything are gonna go, and then once it's in place, bring your units, your dryer and your compressor back and put them on. I mean, it worked out great. It's really solid here, but it's gonna be way easier to put on the fittings and the connections outside the van, and it would be way easier to mount this without the things on there, as you saw. Back in the van now, starting to run the electrical, so I need to drill a hole in the floor here for my 4-gauge wire to come off. I think I'm going to put the breaker right here, run the wires down, and then have my hole right here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I've checked underneath the van. All good underneath, so I'm going to go ahead with the hole saw. Good. Here's the hole. Let's see. Well, that's gonna be perfect, Dad. I'll file down the edges. A couple little coats of. Next up, I'm bringing in the ducted evaporator. Trying to figure out where it's gonna sit. My control panel is gonna be mounted on the wall here, close to this, and it has to be because of this connector right here. I'm gonna put a vent here. This is where it needs to pull air into. Which is why I want the ducting going that way if possible. So these will just hook on like this. Because there are going to be a lot more pipes and electrical wires coming out this side, I'm going to use a 2-inch PVC instead of 1-inch PVC like I used on this side. So I'm going to use a 2 3/8 hole saw bit, which fits the outer diameter perfectly. It's good, that's a big hole. Buddy, big hole. So on the evaporator itself, I'm just removing these little clips. They are for clipping in your corrugated ducting hose. I do have corrugated ducting hose, but I think you need a special tool or something to get it to work with these. So it's fine, I'm just going to use hose clamps where my ducting attaches to the unit. I'm just going to go ahead and put my connections on the evaporator. The big one is out, the small one is coming in. Number 7, evaporator out fitting. So on the out port of the evaporator, there is this little rubbery thing. I wasn't sure what it was, but I checked with Tom and he was quick to reply and let me know that it is part of the protective cap. So we're gonna go ahead and pull that out. Hopefully get it all in one piece. There it is.
Stabbing your finger.
Yeah, that too. So the next fitting here is gonna go on the in port, and it is number 14. So 502 elbow. 502 elbow. So these have tiny little O-rings that you need to put over the nozzle here. It's gonna be like that. I'm gonna install the hose that's coming into the in connection of the evaporator. This will be coming from the out of the dryer. And this uses the 5/16 hose. So there's a little bit of a procedure here, right? You get the hose, you get this little clip, and you put 2 of the appropriate cinch clamps in it, have them oriented the same direction, and then you slide that over the hose, or slide the hose inside, so that the small closed part is at the end of the hose. Okay, just gonna line those up so they're centered, like so. So it should look like that. You want the hose touching the end of that blue clip, just like that. And then with that pushed all the way, I'm gonna take a little bit of oil, just rub it on there just so this slides on easily. Okay, so that is pretty much snug. Now I can go ahead and cinch these rings, starting with the one closest to the end, making sure it's pushed all the way tight. And there is the first fitting. Next I'm going to install the evaporator out fitting. So same thing, take my clamp holder, put 2 in, oriented the same direction, and then the corresponding hose for this is A, which is 1/2 inch. So now I can go put this back in the van. It has my 2 connections and my hoses, and then these are going to go out the bottom of the floor down to the corresponding device. So now as we're attaching the fittings to the ports, we want to keep in mind the position of where our compressor is and the dryer. It's going to be over here on this side and the compressor more over here. So the top port is in, I've marked it, and the bottom port is out to the dryer. So coming in from the 12-volt compressor into the top. Oh, scared me. You gotta watch for that. Pulled the cap off and the little O-ring guy wanted to come with it. Don't want that. Don't want to forget. Oh, just a little bit of oil. Top one is in from the compressor. And then the other guy is going to go the other direction. I'm going to move on to the 12-volt compressor now. As long as I keep it upright, the oil should be fine inside and not leak out. So I can remove these fittings. I just need to be cautious when I put these fittings on. I need to keep it in this upright position or the oil will leak out. Thankfully, my mounting setup, it is sitting like this, so I think it'll be okay.
this is my high side over here, or my out, and this is coming into it, or my low service over here. So with the high side, we're gonna use 482. I think that'll be better. Safe bet going away from the mount. Doesn't really matter on the length. I just want enough that I could do a bit of a bend if I needed. So now we go back to the same procedure. Nice. Those look good. And then we got our high side valve. Again, a little bit of oil. Doesn't matter which side goes in first. Looking good. The only thing is, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Maybe I'll keep, because right now this hose is coming like this and it's gonna come around. But maybe I should just turn it so it comes around like that and enters there. And this one's coming from the evaporator. So I definitely want it coming this way. Have a little collision here. No, this will be good. It'll come like this. They're kind of crisscross. I like it. Cut my hose.
Wow, that went on easy peasy.
Now, we've got the port. So to summarize again, we're gonna have our hose come in from our evaporator, coming in here, coming in the low side port, in this side, and then out the high side port here, going to the compressor. While we still have the compressor out like this, I'm gonna wire in the high service port switch. So the black one, or 1500136, goes on the high service side, and then our low service port switch 135, the green one, goes on the low service side. Now with these wires here on the low and high side switches, basically we need to connect them together. So I'm about as far as I'd be comfortable for that. And then the other two are gonna connect into this unit. So this, it doesn't say if it matters which one. I don't think it will, so I'm just gonna try it. But one will go here, and then one will go over here, and then this connector here will have to come over as well, and it'll join up with this guy. Now that I'd mounted as many fittings as I could, I got back underneath the van to start installing the components. First was the dryer, and then the compressor, and I made sure not to tip it on its side and let the oil leak out.
I'm just gonna leave it loosely connected for now and see if I can get some of these hoses in. I'm now going from the high side of the 12 volt compressor to the in port of the condenser. We're still coming to the high side port, high pressure right here. Next up is condenser out to dryer in. Straight cuts. Okay, green is for dryer in. We know that. It's on there. Please tell me we get the old crimper in there. Yes. Made the crimp way up, back up in there. I just went up to the garage of the van and fed the last two hoses through from the ducted evaporator. So basically we're going from the dryer to the in of the ducted evaporator. So for the last one, we have our big hose coming from the out of the ducted evaporator to the low pressure inside of the compressor. Hopefully you can see this better, but I'm coming out there, literally coming right here and into that low pressure side. So that wraps up running all of the hoses. I'm really happy how it turned out. I like that they're short runs and close to the ducted evaporator there. I just want to show you a couple things with the electrical before we get started. Depending when you ordered it, with this enclosed control panel, down at the bottom here, which is the switched input control on J1, you can see that on mine, they only put the ground wire in. So I need to run an ignition wire from here, so a 12 volt positive from here over to the main number 8 battery terminal, which is 8 gauge minimum, but I'm going to use 4 gauge on it because I have a fairly long run. So there's that 12 volt positive going to the battery for the ignition. I did chat with Tom at UndermountAC, and he said depending when you bought your unit, that they might have already installed that wire for you, so good just to double check it. Next up, I'm going to prepare the power for the compressor. So this uses Anderson connectors. I'm using 4 gauge cable, and they send 6 gauge lugs, so I'm being bad, and I'm just removing a few strands from the end of my 4 gauge cable to make sure it's a perfect fit in here, and then I'm going to crimp it. It's a nice bite all the way around. So I need a couple crimps around. The big thing is that you don't want to change the actual dimensions of the lug. I'm leaving the red and black 4 gauge cables quite long on purpose because I want to connect the Anderson connector side first and then run the cable up through my pipe into the van and connect it to my wiring inside the van. So basically you just put your connector, obviously line up red with positive, and then push it in. It will only go one way. It just clips in like that, and then same on the black. You can see there's a little hook part on the end, and that will clip onto the silver tab inside. So as it goes in, there you go, right to the end, and then they're secure. Now I'm gonna cut this guy where it says 4 for 4 gauge, and I'm gonna pull the cables back through this. I'm just gonna use the heat gun and heat this up a little bit. I know that those are going to be waterproof, which is nice. Okay. So there is my completed Anderson connector. Very happy with that. I'm going to plug this in and then run these up that pipe that I just put in and into my electrical area. When I first looked at this wiring schematic, I was a little bit intimidated, but as you can see now, it's really not that bad. We got a few things coming from our control panel going out of the van. We have this as our power, coming from the control panel to the condenser, and you'll see it's the ends are like this. It's kind of a little puzzle, they'll only fit with the correct components, which is nice. And then this one is the wire I just added. This is my ground, but this connector again on the control panel, and then on this end goes to the 12 volt compressor, and then our high and low pressure ports. And then this super long one in the bag with the big blue connector on the end. This connects at the control panel. It's a 10-pin connector, and then it goes to I think 7 or 8-pin connector on this end. But this is going to stay inside the van and go up to our controller. Really doesn't seem too bad. I'll walk you through it under the van as well, but just wanted to lay them out for you here. I decided to keep any excess wire underneath the van, so I fed it from beneath. If you had a partner assisting in pulling it from above, that would make this a bit easier. I bought a bunch of these super long extreme zip ties. They're like minus 40 to I don't know, plus 60 degrees Celsius. So I'm going to use them to secure the wiring up here. I'm going to just secure it to my angle aluminum. So my 12 volt power to the condenser I can plug in. And that clips in like that. Now my connection with the compressor here, obviously the power is coming separately, and that's going to come from my battery bank over that way. But these 3 connections all happen very close together. So this is the 2 remaining cables from the low pressure switch and the high pressure switch all need to meet up really close here. They really don't give you a lot of length. This is our main lube coming on top to the kind of to the front of the compressor here, and then you can see it splits. So the high pressure goes in, low pressure comes in. Tried to keep a little bit of slack on it, but still I did a little loop at the top just so I don't want it touching the compressor, just in case it gets hot. And this is our main lube coming back and plugging in right at the top there. Sorry if that's shaky. And then the situation for the condenser, right, it's pretty simple. Just the 12 volt coming up here. You can see I've got all my extra lube tucked and zip tied up there nicely, really secure. And then my ground, I just came and then there was a heat shrink butt connector tucked up there. Next up with the wiring is attaching the Anderson connector. Got him here. So that's very secure. And then I'm gonna feed these wires. You can see I have way too much wire. I'm gonna feed them up to Katie. Just the black one?
Next, I went ahead and secured all of the loose cables and hoses using the provided hose clamps and self-tapping screws.
Now I'm just going to do the same thing over here. Obviously we have the muffler, so anything I'm using with zip ties, I'll use these stainless steel zip ties that I got. And then I do want to move this wire away from the muffler a little bit, so I'm going to shift the whole compressor over. And I'll just zip tie these over so they stay well away. I like that better. So just to double check, I'm just going around checking that all the hoses are secured. Nothing's too close to the muffler here. All the electrical is nicely tucked away. So I'm a little bit concerned about this wire right here. So I've decided to wrap this part of the exhaust just to make sure. I know it's already going to be quite cool by the time I get back here, but just to be safe, I'm going to keep it away from the high pressure port here, the electrical. I just don't want to worry about it, so I'm gonna wrap it. I've got the exhaust wrap soaking right now, and I'm gonna install it. Okay, that should be much better, especially with those wires pretty close there. I'm still gonna keep an eye on it next time I go for a drive. I just want to come in and feel this and just see how hot it gets, but I think that will put my mind at ease, not worry about those wires melt. It's a control panel. Obviously the big thing is that it needs to be close enough for this cable to meet this one. So I figure I might as well put it right smack dab right there. I'm not using the included screws for mounting this. I just went with 3/4 inch Phillips number 6. They're basically the only thing that will fit in these tiny little holes. Up in the electrical area now, I need to mount my 150 amp circuit breaker. I've got my cable, but I just want to mount this first so that I know exactly where I need to run the cable to. You can see it here. It's our positive bus bar. So we're going to go mount it around here, have a cable coming to here, and then 2 coming off the top of the circuit breaker. So 1 going across to the control panel, and then the one from underneath the van coming in here. Now that I have that mounted, I know that my red cable here needs to come to the top. So now I'm just going to crimp on and heat shrink these connectors like I normally would. My negative cable needs to come across the battery over to the negative bus bar. I also need a short run from my bus bar to the input of the breaker. I've gone ahead and turned off my main switch here, and then I've also taped these plastic covers on the terminals just to be safe as I'm working over it. I'm gonna connect from my positive bus bar to my 150 amp circuit breaker here. And now I'm gonna stack both terminals. So I'm gonna do the one to the compressor on the bottom, and then coming up off of it, it's gonna be the other one going up this wall and over to the other side. Okay, so now I'm basically doing the same thing for the negative lead from the compressor. My negative for the other side of the control panel on here. Katie did a great job of securing the wires for me. They're coming off of the negative bus bar here, and the circuit breaker here coming up underneath the bed. They're hidden back here and come down right beside the control panel. The next step now is to install this little terminal stud. So I want it within reach of all these little negative wires. Our ground wire is crimped, so I'm gonna bring that and put it right on the bottom of the terminal. It's nice. And then we can bring our negative leads and just stack them on there. Before I put these little ones on though, I want to crimp my ring terminal on my ground wire coming from the condenser unit. So I've got my negative 4 gauge wire from the battery bank coming over, and then my ground or my negative from the condenser unit. But unfortunately, as I went to put these on, I realized they're just too small, the ring terminals. So I'm just gonna cut and recrimp all these 4 that came factory with the unit. It's a 5/16 stud, so maybe you can find a smaller one. Locally, that's all you could find. So okay, now we can go ahead and connect these leads. I'm gonna do the next biggest one. You can go ahead and connect the evaporator wires. And then our power to the condenser. On this one, on the last connector, remove the green tab or you won't be able to get it in. Stupid. Clips, and then I think you put the green tab back in. Yeah. This is it. Tell me it fits. Yes. So that goes on there. Don't forget now to put your ignition wire on there as well. Don't drop this in the duct. So the main thing I added was this ignition signal coming in, and I just put it on top of my 4 gauge wire coming from the battery bank. I put the little liner in the control panel. I assume that's for waterproofing, helping seal it. Now I'm putting it back on. Hopefully we are good to go. Well, the last thing I didn't mention, but Katie already did, was plug in the controller right here. And that goes up to our control panel near the front of the van. The last thing we have to do is run the drain hose from the evaporator here. The tube port is on the side over here. They send the hose and everything in the kit. There's a 90, which I'm going to use to go straight down out of the van. And then this little piece of rubber basically acts, they call it a duckbill valve. So the hose goes on here, and then when water flows through, it opens and allows it, and then it closes again, so that it can't pull air back up through the system. This is the side of the unit. There's the little hoses coming off there. I got it going straight to the 90 and then down out the bottom of the van. Here's the hose coming out. Put the duck valve on, the duckbill valve, so you can see it's open at the top. When water comes down, this will open and then it'll close again, so it can't pull air back up. I'm almost finished. The last thing I need to do now is use this special black tar kind of tape to wrap any exposed metal that's coming out of the evaporator before the hose, and that's to prevent condensation buildup on that metal piece that will then drain or fall onto the floor outside of the pan itself. I've turned the power back on, and the final step is testing it out. Obviously we haven't charged it yet, and I've made some arrangements to do that professionally, hopefully this coming week. But on the controller here, there's 2 inputs. So one is for the temperature sensor, and that one goes on this little guy in the corner, 2 prongs. And then the other one is your main lead for your controls and everything. There we go. It's a little tricky to clip in. We're gonna do the big test turning it on. And then you cycle the fan speed 1 through 7. Open that one too. Oh my goodness.
It works.
Wow. Oh, this one. Oh, so powerful. Obviously it's loud. And that's the temperature sensor right here. We'll cycle down to the lowest one. See how it is just volume wise. Pretty good, eh? Pretty quiet. But it doesn't seem like that's not like the evaporator noise. I think that's just the vents. And it was really loud when the vents were closed. Oh wow. That's crazy, eh? Mm-hmm. That's one. And let's see what... Oh yeah. Wow. That's wild. So then you can obviously set the temperature that you want it to keep the van at. up or down. And then you can also just have it on auto. So obviously we still need to charge it, but I do want to show you the location of our vents quickly, how they turned out. So the one is under the bench seat here, and it's pointed up in this direction. So the idea is that hopefully it'll flow up like this. And then in the bed bump outs here, we have a vent in this corner that you can close and open and direct it how you'd like. And then identical in this corner.
Next up, I took the van in to get pressure tested and charged. My buddy Quinn is an HVAC tech who works on heavy duty equipment with systems like this, so he offered to do it for me.
Here we're at Harco Heavy Duty with Quinn.
Here I am.
The big inspection.
Yeah, we use these same compressors on the mine stuff.
Oh really?
Yep. Basically the same thing. So that's a good sign.
Yeah.
Because they get beat up pretty good.
And this is a question everyone always says online. Quinn is like, is it worth putting like an aluminum rock guard or something under there? Like, are you worried about rocks hitting the condenser fans there?
Oh, these fans? No.
They're heavy duty.
They should be pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah. Especially with the diff here too, right? The diff kind of protects everything behind here.
Okay.
I wouldn't be too worried.
Okay, sweet. So how are you gonna pressure test it?
I'm just gonna hook my gauges up to it. And I already have some refrigerant in them from the last job. So, just gonna use that for now. And then, but yeah, definitely tighter than what I'm used to under here. Yes, I can hear it going in. And then I'll recover it and then we'll just vacuum it if everything's good.
And which port do you use for that?
The high side. The high side, so the high pressure, yeah. Always leak test through that side, and then you won't blow your gauge up. Yeah, so we're at about 45 psi.
No leaks?
Not that I can hear, so that's good.
Do you have to leave it in for a certain amount of time?
I mean, I got soapy water and something. Oh, you got her all covered up with the black stuff. Nice.
That's good, right?
Yep. Got me a shovel.
No. Oh yeah.
So there's nothing, so that's good. No bubbles. You gotta check the crimps for sure. Those are the same crimps we use, so they're like the snaps, eh? Oh no, they're not.
Yeah,
that's a little different. They're like
the
they're
PEX cinch crimps.
Yeah, like the Outtro things. Yeah, no sound. It's nice and quiet in here, so you can actually.
You can probably hear it leaking.
Yeah, a lot of the times, like, if you can be in a quiet area, it's nice because sometimes you won't be able to see it so much, but you'll hear it. Definitely a bit of work put into this.
Paranoid.
It's a bit of a project, eh?
Vacuuming it out?
No, this is just recovering what's in there back into the tank.
Okay.
And then we'll vacuum it, and then we'll put fresh refrigerant in it.
No, what's this?
So that's the vacuum pump.
Okay.
Yeah. So what it does when it sucks it down to a vacuum, it actually will lower the boiling point. So you know how like a radiator pressurizes it up, go up to like 10 to 15 psi or whatever, raises the boiling pressure. When you vacuum it, it lowers the boiling temperature of water and moisture. So then it actually, when it pulls like 28 inches of vacuum, it'll just boil off all the moisture in that system. So it takes all the air out and it boils off everything in there.
20-30 minutes of vacuum.
Yep.
Okay.
And it keeps going like that for 20-30 minutes?
Yep. Leg up. And then we'll charge it.
Sounds good. So it's been like 30 minutes on the vacuum?
Yep.
Perfect. So we put the 1 pound in the low side or the high side?
The high side. The 1 pound on the high side to begin with.
And then start the...
And then if you need more, which we will, but then if you need more, then you put it into the low side. Okay. Fresh tank of that good R134.
They ripped you off.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So then you just, and you can see it going in.
You go to 1 pound.
I guess so, or as much as we can. Everything's kind of cold, so. There we go. I guess try her out. The big moment.
Start her up. Do you think it matters which setting?
No, I just put it on the coldest setting.
We're pulling 48 amps.
How many?
48.
Okay.
Now you're going on the low side?
Yeah, so now just little bits at a time on the low side.
Just kind of go on off?
Yeah, because on the low side, you're basically putting the refrigerant in just before the compressor. So it's like you don't want to overload it right in, like liquid into the compressor. So it's little bits at a time, and they're fun. They're pretty tough.
You need 4.5 amps. So on the high setting, which would be the second speed on the compressor, it's pulling around 82, 81 amps. I got a couple lights on. Definitely blowing cold. So on the low setting, it's like 55 amps. That's F2. So speed 2 on the evaporator, and Quinn and I just double checked, and when it hit the temperature in here, the thermostat shut off the compressor. So it looks like we're in business. Welcome back. It is about a week and roughly 2,000 miles later, and we're in sunny California. We have finally a nice day that is 83.7 degrees Fahrenheit. Switched it for all you Americans, and we're gonna do a test of the air conditioning unit. Basically, on your evaporator, you have 7 fan speed settings, so 1 to 7. When it's on speed 1, 2, and 3, that's your low speed on the compressor, and then 4 through 7 are your high speed on your compressor. So we're gonna just crank it up all the way. Hear everything turn on. So we got our temperature sensors as well, just to explain these to you. So the exterior right now is 82.8, interior 70.9, and battery bank. So we will put our fan speed to high. So let's try and cool it off to 65 in here. So we'll see how long it takes to cool it from 71 degrees to 65 degrees when it's roughly 84 degrees outside. once we get to the goal temperature, I'll bump it down to the low fan speed and see what the power draw is. As I turn that on, I did start a little stopwatch here, just because I want to see how long it takes to cool off this 5 degrees. So I've got the Ryobi temperature gun, and I just want to see what the air temperature is that's coming in the vent to the evaporator versus coming out the ports. So, okay, so that's in Celsius, that's 23.6, 15 degrees, so that's a big difference. So 50.8 degrees Celsius, so we're getting some good cooling there. So 23 degrees down to roughly 16 degrees. It's pretty good. Sorry, we're back to Celsius there. I will say that this bed area will definitely be the most comfortable area in the van on a hot sunny day, which is how we wanted it. You can, right, just close a vent if you want more power going the other way, but pretty happy with it as is. We're 13 minutes into the test and we're down to 67 degrees, but the interesting thing is when I check the vents now, they're much colder, 12.6 degrees Celsius, and then the one down beneath the bed, the intake, is still around 23 degrees. So the compressor just shut off because we hit 65 degrees Fahrenheit, and the sea marine sensor's lagging behind just a little bit. Just gonna turn the fan down here. So that took 26 minutes. So it's longer than I expected. I mean, partially I wonder if it's due to the location of my temperature sensor, which is under the bench seat there. Probably not the best spot for it, but I think it's good because you don't want it obviously right where the cold air is blowing, nor do you want it on the floor, because that's probably going to be where all the cold air goes down to. So things to think about, but now I just want to show you how loud the compressor is from the outside. I just want you to hear what the compressor is like. It basically just sounds like a car is running. Maybe like a Honda Civic or something. It's not too loud, but I can see that it might be a little bit. No, I think you can be parked next to someone at the campsite and not worry about it at all. So I've got the compressor on the low setting, pretty much all the lights off in the van. Fan speed 1 is around 55 amps, and then if we go up to full speed, this will be compressed. This is evaporator is on number 7 speed, and the compressor on the high speed goes up to, okay, roughly 86 amps. So roughly 86 amps on high, 50 amps on low. It's not too bad on our battery bank. We could run it on low for 11 hours, maybe 12 hours tops. So definitely get you through the night. You can see too that we have the insulated window covers on. A little blackout curtain, that insulated window covers, and Katie did come in the van 3 times opening the slider door, so that might have affected the test a little bit. Probably could have been a little bit shorter if we kept the van closed the whole time, but overall not too bad. One thing we were nervous about with the undermount unit was obviously having the condenser mounted under the van. We're happy to report that after a 3,000 mile test trip, there was no damage to the condenser fans or the hoses or electrical wires. That's it guys. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.